So where is this? Oh, this is just backing up a little bit. Samaches. We'll be on Amud Beis right away. Just yesterday's Gemara had spoken about the source. It says about Nivel Apostle as puzzle, and that was a brisa. We had three shittas. Once he's a 9-year-old, that's considered a bia, and if it was a puzzle person, for instance, Amoni, Mawavi, Mitzri, Adomi, Kusi, Nasin, Chalol, Mamzer, that had relations with a woman, so it makes a puzzle for Truma, puzzle to marry a Kohen. We had another two shittas over there of Yossi, of Shimon Gamliel. We'll see that tonight again. But the source for this was so far, Bas Kohen Kisiel is Zor. The Pashpshat was, if she marries Yisrael, she's temporarily not allowed to eat Truma as long as she's married. But the Gemara made a drash over there. That was also yesterday. That there's extra words over there to tell you that there's another drasha besides Izor Yisrael. Also Izor apostle, that is really Zor, is apostle. So then he permanently apostles her from Truma if they had relations. So we're continuing from there, and the Gemara has the kasha now on continuing on that drasha. So we're in the bottom of Samach Samad Beis. It is, yeah, the bottom of Samach Samad Beis. Today's daf is for us Samach Tes, but we're starting over here, and the Gemara is not yet satisfied with the drash. What was the pasuk? What was the pasuk? Bas Kohen Kisiel is Zor, with the drash that it means a puzzle, that a Zor, a foreigner, that is puzzle. So that we learn out anybody puzzle makes her a puzzle, which is the heart of zona. That's the Agdar of a zona if she had relations with somebody that's puzzle. So the Gemara says, how do you know? Maybe the pasuk shadarshan only if this is a chayvi krisis, a very serious avera. That's called Izor. And only if she has such a relation is she going to become puzzle for kuna, truma. But maybe if she only had relations with a chayvi lavin, like all the cases over there, so maybe she wouldn't become puzzle. The more answers, kisiyah Rahman. The pasuk says, Bas Kohen kisiyah Izor. So kisiyah means that she does become to him. That means that it really works, which means that it's Tofis Kedushin. Chayvi Krisis is not Tofis Kedushin. Hanatis Mu Havaya. Chayvi Krisis, Lavane Havaya. It's much for somebody that could become married. That means you're not allowed to, but they could. That means that if all these cases, so marrying a mamzer or Amoni, or Moavi, to people that you're not allowed to marry, Lo Yavo Amoni, so it's a Chayvi Lavin. Chayvi Lavin we've had is Tofis Kedushin. Only Rabbi Kiva argues on that. But we hold that Chayvi Lavin is Tofis Kedushin. So the pasuk is mashma that it's even talking about somebody that kisiya, even somebody, the kasha was maybe only chayvi krisis, but if the pasuk says kisiya, it means it's somebody that it does work. If it does work, it means it's chayvi lavin. And even on that, the pasuk says that also she becomes pasul for truma. So that's a good Russia. But the Gemara says, if so, yeah,
only if she marries them?
Nothing to do with marriage. It's a person that has marriage, even if it says a person that kisiya, it could be. So even if they didn't, we're talking about here no marriage, just he had relations. But since it's a person that could have relations, it means that it takes effect. But if it will be chayvi krisus, then even if they'd have kedushin, it wouldn't take effect. So the pasuk's mashma, it's even talking about such a person, chayvi lavin, and also that kind of a bia makes her pasul to kuna. Yachi goy ve'eved lo lipsalu. If so, that it's talking about somebody that has kedushin, a goy and an eved can have kedushin. If a goy or an eved gave kedushin to a woman, the Yisraelis, does not take effect. So then it shouldn't be possible. Taisus explains that of course chayvi krisus is worse than chayvi lavin. So if it doesn't have kedushin, is a reason that it should be even worse. If we said before that chayvi lavin makes her possible, surely chayvi krisus. But here Taisus says that the Gemara means to say that a goy and an eved is not chayvi krisus. It's not so chamor. It's only a chayvi lavin, and it does not have tefisas kedushin. Maybe the Torah didn't pasul. Maybe if a goy or a eved had relations with a woman, it doesn't make her pasul, because this pasuk is only talking about kitiyah, somebody that could have a kedushin. Chayvi krisus, Taisus says, surely is possible because it's much more chamor. Chayvi krisus is more chamor. But a goy that's not more chamor mitzad the chayvi lavin, mitzad the level of how aser it is, it's also a chayvi lavin, and it does not have tefisas kedushin. Maybe the pasuk over there is not talking about it. You need another source to say that if a goy or an eved have relations with a woman, that also makes a pasuk. The Gemara answers there's a pasuk for that also, another pasuk. There's another drasha from Rabbi Shmuel that says that a goy or eved that have relations with a woman makes her pasuk for kuna. Dam Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shmuel menai legoy eved shabal bas Yisrael bal kohenes uleviah shapaslua. Mamashal question: how do you know that a goy or an eved had relations with a Jewish woman? No difference. Kohenes leviah is no difference. That they invalidate her for kuna. Shenemar a different pasuk. The next pasuk. Bas kohen kisiyal mano grusha. Again with the drash world. In the pasuk shot in the pasuk it means pasuk before that says bas kohen that she marries Yisrael, Kisiyel Zor, she cannot eat truma temporarily. And then it says, but not temporarily. We hope it goes on forever, but only as long as she's married. But if she gets widowed or divorced from her husband, then she can go back to her father's house to eat. But the Gemara is saying a drash on this also, that it's talking about Kisiyal Manog Busha. The pasuk we said before about Izor that apostles Kisiyal Manog Busha. What does that mean? The Gemara explains. Only a woman. We're talking about a man who would have possible to have widowhood or divorcee from that man. But the Eved and a Goy, the B'chlam on the Parsha. Yasu Eved Goy, the Eved Shein Lo Almanos Gerushin. The pasuk is not talking about such a thing. The pasuk before that spoke about Izor is not talking about a relationship that there's no gerushin, that there's no relationship at all. The Gemara is going to have to explain. There's not enough of an explanation yet, but it said the pasuk is excluding a Goy and an Eved because they have no parsha of kedushin at all. The whole thing of widowhood doesn't apply. Divorce doesn't apply because no marriage in the first place. The Gemara is the kasha. We have to have a few more lines in order to understand what the Gemara meant. But the Gemara asks, that's only talking about a kohenes. This pasuk is talking about a bas kohen. Bas kohen. Kisiyeh almanog grusha. How about if she's a bas levi or bas Yisrael? Ashkan kohenes, that she becomes possible with relations to a Goy or an Eved. How about the bas levi or bas Yisrael? How do you know that if she had relations with a Goy or Eved, that she also becomes possible to Kuna? Minolan, Kedam Rabbi Abba, Amarab, Bas Ubas. That is, he says someplace else this drasha that the Avav Ubas is coming to be marba more. Here also we can use that drash to say that it's coming to be marba even the Levi of Israelis. Machanami Bas Ubas is coming to tell you this drasha. The Gemara is not so happy because not everybody darshans Avav. Come on, Kavakiva the Darish Vavi. Only Akabakiva holds you Kadashan Avav. They're going to argue and say that Avav is not darshanable because that's the way the Torah talks. But no, Afilu Tem Rabbanan and Kula Ubas Kari Seru. The whole pasuk is extra. Could have just gone and said Kisi, yeah, and we would have known that it's talking about the above woman. So the whole pasuk is extra. So the Gemara is happy that you have a pasuk for a Bas Kohen, Bas Levi, Bas Yisrael, that if they have relations with a Goy or an Eved, they become possible for Truma. The Gemara is the kasha. On the contrary, Neima Misha Yeshlo Almanas Gerishin Bok Ki Lesle Zara Ka'achla. But Misha ain't lo manas gerushin ba afagav this le zara nami techel. The pasuk over there says that a woman who's a widow or divorced and she doesn't have any children, then she can go back to eat truma. But if she has children, she cannot, which is the pasuk shot that a bas kohen that marries the Yisrael, if she has children out of Yisrael, she can't go back anymore. She's not kinureha. So maybe say the Josh over here also that only a man who's in the parsha that he has kedushin like a Geramoni, Geramoavi, these people that they Chayv Lavin, but they in the parsha of kedushin over there, if they had relations and they are, I forgot what I said. I have to go back again. If a person that has kedushin, a person that has tefisas kedushin, that's the Chayv Lavin. Over there, the pasuk says that if there are no children, I'm not saying right. I'm saying the case of Yisrael that he married over there. It says the chiluk if there's children or not. If there's no children, she can go back. If there are children, she cannot go back. But the guy over here, Misha, but this person who's being excluded, maybe is coming to say that it's not in the parsha at all. And even if there was a child born of that union, also she could eat. Maybe the pasuk is not coming to be machmer. Maybe the pasuk is coming to be mekel. That when a guy's relations, it's a garnish. There's nothing. He doesn't even have tefisas kedushin. And maybe the pasuk is meant to say that even if the child is born out of that union, also she still be allowed to go back to eat truma. How do you know to darshan it in the chumra way? Maybe darshan it in the kula way. Taisus is bothered. You never find such a thing that you darshan a hekesh lekula. But here the Gemara is asking it. Taisus doesn't know an answer. The Gemara is asking maybe learn a kula that it's coming to say that it's more to even if there is a child born. That's why. Yeah, and there's no shaykh. There's no. It would be a Jewish kid. But since the pasuk is coming to say that he's out of the parsha, maybe you mean to say that he doesn't puzzle her. The woman's not going to become puzzled even though she had relations with somebody because it's not out of the parsha. But the Gemara says no. Imken revui levi of Yisrael is normally that this rasha only works. The Gemara means to say after we have the pasuk for Levi and Yisrael also, as we said, you have to have a special pasuk basu bas to tell you that even a bas Levi bas Yisrael also becomes puzzle. So now it's in muchach we're coming to say a chumrah. If we're coming to say a kula, even a bas kohen is mutter if she had relations with a goy, so then it wouldn't have to have another pasuk for Levi of Yisraelis. It's a kal v'chomer. Levi of Yisraelis is less. It must be the pasuk coming to say a chumrah that a bas kohen becomes puzzle, and then the kasha is maybe only a bas kohen, maybe Levi of Yisraelis is mutter. So the fact that it has a pasuk to say that Levi of Yisraelis is also, it must be the pasuk coming to say a chumrah and not a kula. And we learn out that a goy and a eved do pasal a woman, even though there's no tefisas kedushin. The pasuk is talking about kisiya, but there's not a pasuk to say bas kohen kisiyam monogusha to say that a guy also pasals her when he has relations.
So a bas kohen has a relationship with a Jewish guy. and that's it. That she can't have any. She can't go. She can't.
No, what kind of Jewish guy? What's with him? What's his status? Is he kosher? Is he kosher Jewish?
Kosher
So that's
Jewish.
gonna then she's kosher. That's gonna be.
Then
She could.
She has just she's sleeps with him.
Yeah. So they had relations, and then she can still marry. She can still marry a Kohen. She could. Here we're talking about that's a puzzle. Here the point is a puzzle.
And she still gets.
She could eat truma. Yeah. It's only when it's a puzzle. That's the point. Nivel the puzzle. We set up all kinds of psulim. Also a goy and an ebed. Also, even though they're in different parsha, also they puzzle the woman. No difference. Kohenes, Levi, Yisraelis. They become puzzle. They can't eat truma and they can't marry a Kohen. But we're going to see soon. But if there was no puzzle about them, just that they had a union out of marriage, but no puzzle. No. It's she doesn't become puzzle. That's going to be the next Mishnah. So the more at this point is happy that we got a drasha to say that Nivala la pasla, the pasuk was Kisiya lezor, and you also have to have the pasuk to say go. You also have to have the pasuk to say Kisiya no grusha. But now the Gemara backs up a little bit. Where's that? Uli Rabba Kiva. What's the problem? The Gemara we had, just to back up a little bit, the Gemara had to have two psukim. We said that the first pasuk we started today that maybe only Chavi Krisis, because the ones that Kisiya, somebody that has thesis kedushin. Yachi a goy, the goy is not included in. They might need another pasuk of Bas Goyin Kisiya Almana Grusha. Now the Gemara is backing up. This whole kasha was only a kasha if you hold not like Rabbi Kiva, that Chavi Krisis is not Tofis kedushin, and Chavi Lavin is Tofis kedushin. Rabbi Kiva holds that none of them are Tofis kedushin, even Chavi Lavin. Yes, Chavi has say, but Tesis talks about that, but we'll leave it out of the scope of our discussion. So the Gemara is asking that the whole kasha in the first place, why you had to have the second pasuk, is because maybe this pasuk didn't include a goy because maybe there's no Tofis kedushin. Kisi, maybe only says Chavi Lavin and not a goy because a goy is not Tofis kedushin. But Rabbi Kiva that holds that Chavi Lavin is also not Tofis kedushin, so you don't need two psukim. You don't need a pasuk for a goy because the goy is no different than anybody else. Chavi Lavin is already in the pasuk Kisiya. Already has to include Chayv Lav, and there's no difference. Chayv Krisis, Chayv Lav, and they're all not Tofis Kedushin. So guys also included. So you don't need the second pasuk. That's the Gemara's kasha now going to be. Everything we were only taking the side of the Rabbanan that Chayv Lav is Tofis Kedushin, Chayv Krisis is not Tofis Kedushin. So then the Gemara said the Kisiya to tell you it's even talking about Chayv Lav, and that triggered the question. So maybe your guy is not included, but that's only if you hold, like Peter said, the Rabbanan Rabbi Kiva that Chayv Lav is Tofis Kedushin. But now the Gemara is asking that according to Rabbi Kiva you don't have all that. Well, Rabbi Kiva. The Amar ain't kedushin tofsin b'chayv lavin, and there's no difference between the chayv krisis chayv lavin as far as that. Or my kisi lizor kisi boil that the pasuk kisi you don't mean that it has the krisis kedushin because chayv lavin also don't. So, but the word kisi it has to be understood that it just means relations. It doesn't mean kedushin is tofes. So then the kasha is amana grusha lamali. You don't need the pasuk. The second pasuk you don't need to darshan anymore to take a goy because a goy is the same parish as anybody else. There's no krisis kedushin, and once you say that a relationship that's usher. Asers, the woman, there's no reason to say that a goy and an Evan will be different. So we have to explain why do you need a pasuk of Almana Grusha for? So the Gemara answers, we'll say a reason why it says it. Almana lahachmir Allah, Grusha lakalala. Rashi explains that the Gemara is going to explain itself that we're going back to the Pashup Shot that's talking about a Bas Kohen that married Yisrael. Everything's kosher. She's not allowed to eat truma as long as she's married to the Yisrael. And then it says if she comes on Almana or a Grusha from that Yisrael, she can go back to the father's house to eat. Is there any chiddush in the fact that it says Almana or Grusha? It says both examples. It could have said one example. It says both examples. If her husband dies or he divorces her, she can go back to eat truma. So there's a chiddush. The Gemara says keep to the pasuk shot, and there's reason why the pasuk has to say almana grusha, not to say this fancy drasha about a goy and an eved. There's no tvisas kedusha. That doesn't mean that. It still stays with the widow, with the pasha of Israel, and there's a chiddush to say both by almana and grusha the halach is true. Usricha. The Gemara is going to say at one point, just to say Agdama preview. The Gemara is going to say that a grusha we find that she's asked to marry a Kohen. Almana is not asked to marry a Kohen, only a Kohen Gadol. But a grusha is worse than Almana at this point about marrying a Kohen. So you might think that it affects her eating truma also. And the pasuk says that it depends if she has children or not. It says this Almana grusha, if she has children, she cannot go back. If she doesn't have children, she could go back. And the chiddush is both of them. Almana lahachmir. It's going to say a chumrah that you might think Almana could go back even if she has children. So once say no, that if she has children, she can't go back, even though she doesn't become possible to marry a Kohen. But if she has children, she's stuck into the family still, and she can't go back. And the grusha is going to be a chiddush that if she does not have children, she could go back to eat, even though she doesn't have to marry a Kohen, she still could eat truma. That's what the Gemara explains. With tzricha, you need both almana and grusha, one to be machmer, one to be mekel. Yes, min and almana. If the pasuk only would have said about almana, that the pasuk says depends if she has children or not. With children, she can't go back. without children, she could go back. You would say Almana who dechilas lazera achla mishum dechazi lakuna. Almana goes back if she has no children because she doesn't become puzzle to a Kohen. So she's allowed to marry a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. You might think that a grusha, the same way she's not allowed to marry a Kohen, she also can't eat truma either, even though she has no children. So the pasuk had to say no, that if she has no children, even, did I say it the right way? Yes, that even grusha who, if she has no children, she could go back to eat truma. She can't marry a Kohen, but she could eat truma. And the other way is also important to say. You might think she has two problems. Both she's grusha is puzzled to marry a Kohen, also to marry a Kohen, and also she has children. She's still related to that old family. But almana, the chazi lakuna, emafagav this lazera nami techel. You might think that almana, since she's mutter to marry a Kohen, so she might be mutter to eat truma even if she has children. So tzricha, I have to say both things. So the pasuk is necessary to say almana grusha even without the fancy drasha. So at this point, we're happy that the nivel of the pasala is pasla, and even chayve krisos, and even chayve lavin, and goy and eved. Question if you need a pasuk for that or not. According to Rabbi Kiva, you don't need a special pasuk. According to Rabbi Kiva, you need a special pasuk. And also, we found out that the regular law of marrying Yisrael, that she, if the marriage is over, she can go back to her father's house to eat truma. If she doesn't have children, and if she does have children, she cannot go back. Applies both to Almana Grusha, which is the Pashim Shah and the pasuk. The Gemara has another problem that according to this rule, it should come out that any Chayv Lavin is considered nivel of the pasuk. She had relations with somebody that she's not allowed to. So she becomes pasal lakuna, and that would even also include machzik grushasa. According to the drasha, it should come out that if Bas Kohen married Israel and he divorced her, and he married her again, and she married somebody else, and then she went back, then he divorced her or died, and she went back to the first husband. That's not allowed. That's usher. Even though there's nothing to do with a Kohen over here. She's a Bas Kohen. She married Israel, got divorced, married, and went back to the first husband. That's a Chayv Lavin. They can't take her back after she was married somebody else. So is that going to make her now puzzled to a Kohen? What if this Israel dies now? Could she go back? Could she marry a Kohen now? What happened? She's a Bas Kohen. No, so let's say everybody died only. She was a Bas Kohen. She was a, did I say? What happened over here? Yeah, a Masik Rushaso. So let's talk about eating truma then. Could she eat truma? She a Bas Kohen.
So just because she married the same guy the second time.
Right. She was Bas Kohen. She married Israel, got divorced, married somebody else, got divorced, got married the first guy again, and now got divorced. Whatever. Could she eat truma from her father? So you're right. As far as marrying a Kohen, she can't because she's a grusha a couple of times, but. Truma she should be able to eat.
Well, as long as she can't have she hasn't had children in the meantime.
But she's but that's the kasha. It's a chayv lavin. That when the husband took her back, that was avera. So she was nivel pasala. Are you going to say that she's not allowed to eat truma anymore because she had relations with somebody's pasala? It's her husband, but it's husband. This husband's usher because she wasn't allowed to go back to the original husband after she married somebody else. And the halach is, I would think yes, but the halach is that it doesn't make pasal for truma.
Oh, really?
And why? So that's a kasha. According to the drush we had so far, it should come out that Masik Grishasa is also included, that she should become Nivalola Prasallah. She married the husband again. She's not allowed to eat truma anymore. And it seems that it's not true. The answer is, the pasuk says, Ubas Kohen Kisiyel Izor. This drush, the drush was all from this pasuk, Izor. Excuse me. So we said that the Zor means all kinds of these psulim. Is this called a Zor? Misha Zor Atzlam Eikara. Lafuke Hai, the Lord Zor Atzlam Eikara. This was not originally a Zor. This happened only because she divorced. He divorced her, she married somebody else, and then she wants to go back. So it's not somebody who's inherently a Zar. A Zar means not a non-Yisrael. The Drash. The Drash means puzzle, like a Geramoni, Geramo Kusi, Nasin, Mamze. All these are inherently puzzle. Those are the kind of a Zar that the pasuk is saying when she had relations with them, she becomes puzzle for truma. But this person who's not inherently puzzle, it's only because something happened that she married somebody else. She can't go back. That's not called a Zor Meikor. It's not called the original Zar. So the pasuk is not coming to exclude that. So at this point, I'm happy. We have shot in the drasha that nivala apostle, a woman who was had relations with somebody that's puzzle, usher, even chavi lavin, not only chavi krisis, even chavi lavin, and also a goy and a eved, even though that might be different parsha, also they're included. Maybe you need another pasuk for that. And there's one exception that Masik Rishasa does not make her puzzle because it's not called Zor Meikora. It's not originally usher. That's not what the pasuk is talking about. But the Gemara now is the problem that we didn't talk about. We mentioned it in passing, but it said in the long list in the Brisa a page ago. It said all the examples of nivel lepasala. It also said a chalal. It said a chalal is also on this. Now the chalal is not a kohen. He lost his kuna because how did they create a chalal? The father, the kohen, he married a grusha, zona, chalal. He married somebody who's not allowed to. He's surei kuna, and the child born is a chalal. That chalal, it's true. He's not a kohen. Is he allowed to marry? He's allowed to marry. He's allowed to marry Bas Yisrael. He's even allowed to marry Kohenes. There's no Isra on a Bas Kohen to marry a Chalal. So it says here that a Chalal's relation, when a Chalal has relations with a woman, she becomes possible for a Kohen. It's like a very innocent case. A Chalal made a shidduch. A Chalal has to get married also. He does. So he married. So everyone he can marry a Bas Yisrael. He can marry a Bas Kohen. But that woman that she should know before she gets married, when she gets married to him, she has relations. She can never marry a Kohen anymore, even if he would die. Of course, if he divorces her, she can't marry a Kohen anyway. But even if this husband would die, the Chalal would die, she can't marry. She's possible. Also, she can't eat truma anymore. Even over the case, if she's a Bas Kohen, she can't eat truma anymore. So where does that come from? It means the whole drasha we said was a very nice drasha for all the people that are puzzle. The Geramoni, Moavi, Domi, Mitzri, Nasin, Chalal, Mamzer. I'm sorry, but Chalal is not in the list. Chalal is like, how do you call it? The Yotze Dofen. It's like. It doesn't fit into the list. He's not possible. He's no issue for him to have relations. So how come the wife becomes asa? Yachi Chalal, the lav zor make. They take out the word makor. It's not the point. Yachi Chalal, the lav zor who lo lifso. He shouldn't be puzzled. The answer is Amar Kro lo Yichalal Zaro Bama, a different pasuk. Lo Yichalal Zaro Bama. Let's talk about a mana the Kohen Gadol. It says that a Kohen Gadol should not marry an almana, but lo Yichalal Zaro Bama, and he shouldn't make his children into chalalim. But there's a pasuk over there lo Yichalal Zaro. He should not make his children puzzle. So the Gemara says, "Makish zaro lo zaro." Probably the words are his children, his seed. So his children are compared to himself. Mahu posel lav zaro nami posel. A new drasha. Since the Kohen Gadol puzzles because of the beer that he made with the almana, she becomes puzzle. She became now puzzle because the Kohen Gadol had relations with the almana that he's not allowed to. She becomes now a halal also. So also the children have the same din. So there's a concept that a halal. It's not a big chiddush that a chalal that has relations with a woman, it's kosher marriage. She becomes possible for truma. Both if it's a Bas Yisrael or a Bas Kohen, she's not allowed to eat truma anymore, and she can marry a Kohen even if her husband dies. The Gemara goes back to the first drasha. This chalal was a side point. Going back to the drasha of Bas Kohen ki sihiyeh l'izor, that if she has relations with a puzzle person, she becomes puzzle for puzzle to Kohen. But the pasuk says, "Bas Kohen kisiyeh leizor." Kisiyeh usually means kedushin. So if he gave her kedushin, she should already become puzzle. If what was the case? The Adomi, the Mitzri, the Moni, the Mamzer, he gave kedushin. He didn't have relations. He just gave kedushin. Are you going to say that already she becomes puzzle to Kohen because there was already kedushin? If it's true that the pasuk is this is the source to say that she becomes puzzle because the pasuk says kisiyeh leizor. He b'shemasa v'yalos. She can't eat truma anymore. So then. It should even be from the kedusha alone, even without relations. And that's not true. It's only becomes possible when she has relations. The answer is Dumi the Kohen Gadol Almana. Also, similar to drasha to before. Once we found this pasuk, Lo Yichalel Zaro Bama, we use it for all kinds of things. The real pasuk is going to be the pasuk is Kisi Leizor. But now the Dumi the Kohen Gadol is going to qualify it, just like we find by a Kohen Gadol makes the wife and Chalala pasal to eat truma pasal to eat truma and kuna. So ma Kohen Gadol b'almana b'bia apai nami b'bia. Over there by the Kohen Gadol we know that it's only also when he has relations with her, not the actual marriage, just having relations. So too all the other psulim is also only from having relations. Maybe it's two things that by that from the Kohen Gadol you learn not bia, but also havaya kisiya, and it's only possible if she has both things, both ingredients, that there was kedushin and also bia, but either one alone wouldn't make her. But also the bia alone also wouldn't make her a puzzle. Only the kedushin. Also, to be the Kohen Gadol b'almana, ma Kohen Gadol b'almana b'bia l'chuda, hainami b'bia l'chuda. That from there you see that has to do that he has relations by the Kohen Gadol and almana. So too, everything we learn out similar is only going to be the bia, and the kedushin is not malamorid. The kedushin alone is not going to do anything. And if they have the bia alone, you don't need the kedushin. Everything is dependent on the bia. So far we finished the Tanakama of the Brisa. Just to scroll back to see where we're going on. All this has been explaining yesterday's Brisa. Further back. This was the Brisa where we had three opinions, and the first one was the Gufa Ben Teshanav Yom Echad. We were just explaining this Brisa, Keramoni, Moavi, Mitzri, Adom, Mikusi, Nasan, Chalal, Mamzer, that had relations with a Bas Kohen, Bas Levi, Bas Yisrael, make them puzzle. And we explained the source is because Kisiyeh Leizor, and maybe the Goy, also we had the Goy doesn't say over here, but a guy and Evid also make a puzzle. We also had the din about a cholol also make a puzzle, and only bibia, not b'kedushin. All that is explained already. Now the Gemara goes on to the Rabbi Yossi and to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. So the words of Rabbi Yossi is that it's not enough that she's never a puzzle. There's another condition. She only becomes puzzle if the children would have been puzzled also. Means this person who had relations with her, is he so puzzled that his child is also puzzled? If he's the kind of person that his child is puzzled, then his bia makes the woman puzzled. But if his child is not going to be puzzled, so the bia that he had with a woman is also not going to be puzzled. So that's a riddle. What does that mean? What's the case of someone who's puzzled, but his child is not going to be puzzled? So the Gemara is going to say the answer to the riddle. It's going to be Mitzri and Adomi. Mitzri and Adomi, the pasuk says that they're a ger Mitzri, a ger Adomi. So he's a good ger, he's a kosher ger, but he can't marry a Bas Yisrael for 2 generations. The pasuk says, Lo Sasaiv Mitzri, Ki Adomi Ki Achicha Ulo Sasaiv Mitzri Ki Ger Yisa Batzo, Banim Hashem, Vadu Lem Dor Shlishi, Yavo Lem B'Kal Hashem. The 3rd generation is permitted. The first 2 generations is also, the 3rd generation would be allowed to marry in. So that's the case. If you have a 2nd generation Mitzri who had relations with the Bas Yisrael, it's also, they weren't allowed to have relations. According to Tanakama, she's puzzled because she had relations with somebody that's puzzled. But according to Rabbi Yossi, you need this condition that the child should be puzzled. Since the 3rd generation Mitzri is not going to be puzzled, so the 2nd generation Mitzri's Bia is not going to puzzle the wife. That's what the Gemara is going to say now. This was the Brisa a page ago. Rabbi Yossi on the cultures are apostle, postal, culture chains are apostle in the post. Only if his children will be apostle, then his be apostles, the woman. But if his children will not be apostle, so his bia does not apostle, the woman. What's the nafkamina? The nafkamina would be 2nd generation Mitzri, 2nd generation Adomi, because their children, the 3rd generation, is going to be kosher. So according to Rabbi Yossi, according to Tanakama, anyway, the be apostles, because the be psula, 2nd generation is also. But according to Rabbi Yossi, since the 3rd generation is not going to be apostle, so the be of the 2nd generation also doesn't apostle. Where do they learn it from? These 2 sheets, Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. Also, the similarity to Alman al Kohen Gadol, which we said before. Tanakama Sava, Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'almana should be also a Bavera or Posel of Hainami Posel. What's the comparison? We see that Kohen Gadol is not allowed to have relations with Almana, and if he does, he makes her puzzle. So too, anybody that has relations with someone that's puzzle makes her puzzle. But Rabbi Yossi says the case of the Kohen Gadol is also the child is also puzzle. Rabbi Yossi Sava, Kohen Gadol, not Kohen Gadol, which is our puzzle uposel, of course is our puzzle uposel. This Kohen Gadol who's going to marry an Almana, has relations with Almana, the child born is going to be a cholol. So too, only such a kind of a bia that the next generation would be puzzled makes the woman puzzled, but if not. Lafukim mitzvah sheni, then our puzzle the sib banim Hashem bodu lem dor shlishi yavol lem b'kal Hashem dor sheni mitzvah sheni does his next generation is not going to be puzzled because it says in the pasuk the 3rd generation is permissible to come into the call. So according to Rabbi Yossi, that bia of the dor sheni wouldn't make the woman puzzled. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel was the next opinion over there. If we scroll back a page ago, that's because Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is the 3rd opinion, and he says a different condition than Rabbi Yossi. What does he say? That the daughter has to be puzzled. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer kol shatanosi bita tanosi almonosi. If you're allowed to marry his daughter, you're allowed to marry the woman he had relations with, the almana, the woman he had nothing to do with marriage. If he had relations with a woman, so according to Rabbi Yossi, as long as the next generation, no difference a son or a daughter. But according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, a bigger heter. Even if the son would be puzzled, but if the daughter's not going to be puzzled, also the woman who he had relations with is not going to be puzzled, and that's a riddle also. The more answers the riddle. Because Amoni Ma'avi, the daughters are not puzzled. We know famous Russia coming up on Shavuos that Amoni v'lo Amonis, Ma'avi v'lo Moavis. That's how David was allowed to marry. That's how Boaz was allowed to marry Rus, because even though it was from Moab, but Moavis. So the daughters born of the Gamoni Ma'avi are allowed to marry into Am Yisrael. So according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, since the daughter of this Amoni Moavi, even though he wasn't allowed to have relations, the Amoni Moavi was not allowed to have relations. He'd be a psula, but never a pasula. But according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, since the daughter wouldn't be puzzle, so the woman who he had relations with also is not puzzle. The same source of the drasha. Rabbi Yossi Yasava, Mikma Kohen Gadol Ba'amana, Shizar Apostle, Apostle, Shizar Apostle, Apostle. But we said before, he has to have the children also. So the children of the Kohen Gadol are going to become halalim. So too, anybody whose children are apostle also, his be apostles. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Sava, Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'amana, Shekol Zar Apostle, Apostle. Only similar, like it has to be more similar. That any kind of a child that he has, no difference a boy or a girl, either one is going to become apostle they're going to be a halal, either a halal or halala. After calls our apostle, that's one was postal. Then calls our apostle. Since the daughters of Ammoni and Moavi are allowed to marry Jewish, so that's not similar to the Kohen Gadol, and therefore the bia of this apostle, even though the Ammoni and Moavi is not allowed to marry a Jewish girl, but if they did, it doesn't make a apostle to eat truma and to marry a Kohen. That's the end of that sugya. And begadol, if you look, I guess I didn't look into the halacha, but if you pass them like Tanakama, then you don't have these. Then anybody, you have, according to Rav Yossi, mitzvah sheni, mitzvah adomi sheni would not passel, and according to Moshe Gamliel, Ammoni Ma'ovi wouldn't passel. The next mission is what Moshe talked about. What if it would be a good Jewish boy and a good Jewish girl, all kosher, but they had relations without marriage, so that should become passel? She's a bas kohen or bas levi, bas Yisrael. They had relations without any marriage. Poni ba'ala pnuya. Does that make her passel to eat truma? So the mission says no. She doesn't become passel. She doesn't become passel to marry a kohen. She doesn't become passel to eat truma. That's called onus umafata. Onus umafata means either he raped her or he seduced her, but he's a kosher. His lineage is kosher. He needs some fixing up, but his lineage is kosher. Onus umafata, or he seduced her. Shota. Also, we had before about a cherish, that a cherish is kedushin drabanan, but for Shota they didn't give kedushin drabanan. He's not capable of having a marriage, so they didn't make kedushin drabanan for a Shota. So if they had relations, it's considered just relations without marriage. So it's not going to make him puzzle. It's not going to make her puzzle for truma or kuna, and also it's not going to give the ability, even if the case would be lo machilin, if he'd be a Kohen, it wouldn't give her any right to eat truma because they had relations. It has to be only if he marries her. So that's what it says, that onus, mapata and shota, don't puzzle for truma or kuna and don't give the right to eat truma. Then it says over what we learned the whole time. What is that?
To the mother.
Right. But if they're puzzle people, that's what the Mishnah said before, that if they're puzzle, so then they do puzzle, which what the Mishnah said before. The Gemara said before, why does it say twice the same thing? The Gemara said one's talking about Psulei Kuna, one's talking about Psulei Kohol, but it's repeated, but it's telling you a chiddush. But that's the halach we had, that if the man is puzzle, a puzzle man, like we had all the cases we had before, so then that bia puzzles the woman, but if there's no psul, so then the bia doesn't puzzle, even though they had relations without marriage, it doesn't make a puzzle for kuna. Ketzad. So the Mishnah is going to say a couple of cases and show sometimes it'll be ironic, sometimes it won't, just to bring out the points of the chiddush that was said over here. Yisrael Shabbat Bas Kohen. What if it's without marriage? Aponi Bar La Pnuya. Yisrael Shabbat Bas Kohen. They had relations without marriage. Yisrael with a Bas Kohen. Tochel Betruma. She's still allowed to eat truma because he didn't marry her. If he would have married her, then the marriage stops her from eating truma. Right, she's a bas kohen. She wants to eat truma because she's a bas kohen from her father's house. So she still could continue eating truma because no one married. The Israel didn't marry her. If he would have married her, she can't eat truma anymore. But he didn't marry her, so she could still eat truma. What if she became pregnant from this bia ibra? So now she cannot eat truma anymore. We said that the Rashi was before because it says only kinureha if she's in the same state as she was when she was still in her virginity. She's not anymore because she's pregnant, so she can't eat truma. If there was an abortion, or Rashi points out also if the child was born and died, then tochal, she could eat truma again, because what's stopping her from eating truma? Only the child. She's a bas kohen that's not married. The marriage doesn't stop her, but the child marriage stops her. So if she's pregnant, she can't eat. If the child was born, she cannot eat. But if there's no pregnancy, or if it was terminated, or if the child died, she could go back to eat truma from her father's house. How about the opposite case? Say a Kohen Shabal Bas Yisrael. The case was again without marriage, no marriage over here, but Kohen had relations with a Bas Yisrael. Does that relation make her to eat truma? No, no sachal b'truma. They had relations doesn't make that. He didn't marry her. If he would have married her, they could talk about it by the Nisuin. But there's no marriage, so that's because that relations doesn't make her to eat truma. Ibra also lo sachal. There's no kinyan kaspa, right? And Ibra lo sochal, even if she becomes pregnant, she can't yet eat because we said that only yelud machil, any yelud lo machil. The child's going to be able to give her truma when he's born, but before he's born, she cannot yet eat truma. But yelda tochal, even though the child born is a kohen had relations with a girl out of marriage, and she gave birth to a kohen. So her son is a kohen, even though she's not married to a kohen. So she can eat truma because of the child. Nimsa kocha shel ben gadol mishalav. Here you have that the son is able to do more than the father. The father didn't marry. The father has had relations, and he's a kohen. His relation wasn't enough to make the woman eat truma because they didn't marry. But the son could. So it's just the Mishnah is bringing out the irony that the son is able to do what the father didn't do. The father's bia didn't make it eat truma, but the son does. Ha'eved. How about an eved? Eved, we said before that Eved does possible, but here it says Eved postal mishum bia, vein postal mishum zera. Eved is not considered a child. It's not. We said before, there's no yichus. The Eved is not considered miyuchas. There's no lineage over there. They're not related to each other. The parents and the children, they're biologically like animals. We said also that animals they give birth to each other, but not that they're considered related. So too the Eved with his children, with his biological children, are not considered related. What's that? What's the relative to over here? So Gemara says a chiddush. We didn't have this yet. We really did have it, but we skipped it at the time because we said at the time it was a little bit too advanced. But now we're more advanced already. That the halacha that if a woman has children, like Vizera Einla, we had both ways. If a Bas Kohen has children, Zera, she can't go back to her father's truma because she has Zera, she has children. Not only if she has children, not if she has grandchildren, and the children already died, but she has still grandchildren. Also, that's still considered that she has children, and she cannot go back to her father's house. And also the opposite is a Bas Yisrael that married a Kohen. So if she has children, she can eat from the children, even if she's not anymore married, but the child gives the mother to eat truma. Not only the child, even the grandchild, even if the children died, but they are grandchildren, so their grandchildren can give the grandmother to eat truma. So here's the case going to be about the Eved. Eved ain't a postal mishum zera. He's not considered a grandchild. He's not considered a child. What will be the case? Case said Bas Yisrael the Kohen or Bas Kohen Yisrael. Either way, there was a Bas Yisrael married a Kohen or a daughter of a Kohen married a Yisrael.
Married or the
Right, not married. Right, no. At this point, I think it doesn't make a difference if they're married or not. It's not the point. That's not the point of the Gemara. It's going to be the next generation anyway. So I think it does make a difference if there was a marriage or not. But Yoldei Menu Ben, they had a child. If their father was a Kohen, the kid's a Kohen. If the father was a Yisrael, the kid's a Yisrael. Doesn't make a difference yet. And the son had relations with the Shifcha Kananis. It says the word Nichbash, which is a derogatory way of saying relations. Nichbash just means like you pressed against it. The Gemara doesn't want to use the lashon of having marriage or relations even. It just says Nichbash, like you pressed against it. That's the lashon used by an Eved. So this, with the Shifcha. So this son, he's a kosher son. Either Kohen, he might even be a Kohen, but he had relations with a Shifcha Kananis, and they had a child. And this Shifcha gave birth to a son. That son is Eved. If the mother's a Shifcha, the son is an Eved. They raise an Eved. Now, what's going to be? Is he considered a child of his grandmother? We said that usually the grandchild is considered children as far as this halacha, that if a Bas Kohen has some kind of children or grandchildren from a Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat truma. Or the opposite case, a Bas Yisrael married a Kohen, if she has children or grandchildren from a Kohen, she could eat truma. But this child is not considered related. This grandson, a biological grandson, but since it's an Eved, it's not considered related to the grandmother. So therefore, it doesn't affect her. How did the Mishnah say? If she'd be a Bas Yisrael, if this Eved's father's mother, his grandmother, was a Bas Yisrael that married a Kohen, lo sochel b'truma. Aim Aviv was a Bas Yisrael Kohen, so she wants to be able to eat truma because she has descendants from this Kohen. So no, lo sochel, she can't because this is not considered a descendant. The Aviv is not related. And the opposite, if the grandmother would have been a Bas Kohen Yisrael, and now the question is that there's some descendants from the husband, his grandson, so that should stop her from eating truma. No, tochel b'truma, because this Eved is not considered a grandson. The yesod is that an Eved is not considered related, and therefore, if they had such a case over here where the grandchild is an Eved, what was the case? That there was the first generation, Yisrael Kohen Yisrael. Second generation, there was a son that was born, and he had relations with a Shifcha. So the third generation is an Eved. That Eved is not considered the seed of the generation before, and surely not from 2 generations ago. So the grandmother is not affected by this child. But a mamzer is considered related.
in the positive, she's not affected positively that
She's not considered. You're saying to which one? In the case of the Eved? The case of the Eved? Either way, it's not affected. It doesn't affect either way. It doesn't affect to stop her from eating truma. It doesn't affect her to yes to eat truma.
But she go back to her father's house.
She could go back to her father's house. Bas Kohen Yisrael tochel b'truma, because even though she has a grandson, it's not a grandson. Now mamzer is considered related. It is considered related, even though it's a mamzer, but he's still considered related. Not like an Eved. Eved doesn't have a relationship. So here it's going to say mamzer posel l'machal. It is going to posel his grandmother or give his grandmother to eat. What's the case over here? again, Bas Yisrael, Kon Bas Kon Yisrael, the first generation over here with the marriage or the bia happened even without a marriage. So either the father or the mother, one of them was Yisrael, one was a Kohen. Yoldei Menu Bas, and a daughter was born, and this Bas had relations with a Eved or a Goy. Now it says an example of Eved and a Goy, and it wants to get a mamzer for the next generation. But now we don't hold like that. Here it says that there was a daughter that had relations with a Eved or a Goy. Taisus doesn't know why it says this. She should have said Nichbasha or whatever, but there was relations with this daughter to an Eved or a Goy. V'yol Menu Ben, and she had a son. This Ben Hareza mamzer. Now we don't hold like that. We hold Eved v'Goy Allah Bas Yisrael Allah kosher. The child is born, a woman, a Jewish woman that had relations with a Goy or an Eved. So the child is, we hold, of course he's Jewish because the mother is Jewish, even though the father was a Goy, but the mother was Jewish, so the son is Jewish. And we hold there's not a mamzer. But there was a big machlok because this Mishnah seems to hold that he is a mamzer. What? I don't remember. Not because the Goy is different. Goy is, even though I don't think it's totally in there. I forgot. But okay, I forgot. But we pass in that even though we hold Chavi Krisis as a mamzer and a Goy and an Eved. Okay. It could be there was a sheet that held that as a mamzer besides that also. I forgot the drushes over there, but without knowing, we hold that's not a mamzer. But the Mishnah could have said other cases also. I don't know why I just picked this example. It could have been other examples also that are going to say that anyway there was a Chavi Krisis. The daughter had relations with a Chavi Krisis, whatever it was. So the kid is next generation is a mamzer. So Haisa Ein Imo Bas Yisrael the Kohen Tochel B'Truma Bas Kohen Yisrael Lo Tochel B'Truma. So here the grandchild, this mamzer, is considered a descendant of his grandmother, and therefore is considered Zerah. So if the case was that his grandmother was a Bas Yisrael who married a Kohen, and even if the children, this Bas Yisrael was eating Truma because of the Kohen, and then she had children that are a Kohen, or a daughter that was a Koheness, she could eat Truma. And now even if the second generation died, but the third generation was a Mamzer still around, that's still considered enough presence of Zerah to make her be able to eat Truma. And the opposite, if she was a Bas Kohen, the grandmother was a Bas Kohen Yisrael, and the children died, and now she should be able to go back to her father's house. No, there's a grandchild that's around that stops her from eating Truma. So the grandmother is related, still has there from her grandchild a mamzer, even though it's a mamzer. And now the Mishnah says a fascinating case that we have this now that a mamzer could give his grandmother to eat Truma. That's what has happened now. She was a Bas Yisrael. A Bas Yisrael married a Kohen. The grandmother was a Bas Yisrael that married a Kohen. And this mamzer, grandson, is helping his grandmother to eat Truma because he's there. I'm here. And my grandmother, the Bas Yisrael the Kohen, still has descendants that from the Kohen, even if I'm not a Kohen, I'm a mamzer, but it still has relation to that grandmother that allows her to eat Truma. Now it's going to show the opposite. And the Mishnah goes extreme to give the example that's possible to have that a grandson is a Kohen Gadol. He's a Kohen Gadol, and he's stopping his grandmother from eating Truma. The Kohen Gadol could stop his grandmother from eating Truma. Everything's kosher over here, a kosher case, but that's what happens. Case that Bas Kohen Yisrael, the old Menu Bas. A Bas Kohen married Yisrael, everything's kosher, that's okay. She married Yisrael, and they had a daughter, fine. Not a daughter, gets married. Okay, everything's fine again. Back into the back. And now they had a son. He's a Kohen. The son is a Kohen. Now he could be a Kohen Gadol. Theoretically, he could become a Kohen Gadol. He became a Kohen Gadol. He's mamash a Kohen Gadol on the Mizbeach, in Kippur, whatever you want. He's mamash a Kohen Gadol, and he's stopping his grandmother from eating Truma because the second generation died. His mother died. So now we want to know this grandmother, does she have children still? She's a Bas Kohen. They married Yisrael. Is there any children? So her daughter died, but the daughter has a son. And he's a Kohen. He's a Kohen Gadol even. But since this Bas Kohen has descendants from her husband, the Yisrael, even though this descendant is a Kohen, he stops her from eating Truma. And the Mishnah says a very poetic, ironic statement. Zoso meres lo kibni Kohen Gadol shu poslani ben Truma. This is an expression of somebody that has a chashav grandson, but he's making her problems. So it says, like, don't to be like my son, the Kohen Gadol, who's postling me from Truma. It's probably an expression that they use. They wanted to say, like, is a great chash of a guy, but all this chashivas doesn't help to help his grandmother. So that's the expression over here, that he's a Kohen Gadol, but he's the one who's stopping me from eating Truma. You think the Kohen Gadol is the most able to give Truma, and on the contrary, the irony is that he's stopping his grandmother from eating Truma. Because what's the case? Because this Kohen Gadol's mother was the daughter of a Yisrael. First generation, a Bas Kohen married Yisrael. and they had a daughter. This daughter had married a Kohen, and they had a Kohen. So this third generation Kohen, his mother was the daughter of a Bas Kohen Yisrael. This Bas Kohen Yisrael, is she allowed to eat truma? Her husband died. Her husband died, so she can go back to her father's house. But if she has a daughter, she can't. The daughter also died. She could go back to her father's house, but she has a grandson. So Zerah, it says for Zerah Einla, then she can go back. But here, Zerah Yeshla.
His father's a Kohen.
And have who? Yeah. This daughter married a Kohen, and that's how they had a son who was a Kohen. He became the Kohen Gadol. But the grandmother was a Bas Kohen Yisrael who still has descendants. So she can't eat truma because of her grandson. So she says,
she didn't have the descendants, she could eat truma like going back to her father. Is that the point?
Gemara, Tenina Laha the Tana
But
Rabbanan.
it's not him, it's just that she can't take advantage of his position.
His position.
It's because she can't go back to the father, right? To the truma of her father.
Right. She can't because she has descendants. Who's the descendant? The Kohen Gadol. So it doesn't help. All the yichus doesn't help to eat truma because she still has descendants from her husband, the Yisrael. Yeah. There's nothing, no problem. It's just ironic. That's the Mishnah is bringing out the irony of it. Tenina Laha the Tana Rabbanan. This Mishnah will be support to a Brisa. The Brisa said at the beginning of the Mishnah, it said about a onus from Fat and a Shota. And it said that the Shota doesn't have any marriage, and therefore there's no takana or isser, nothing, it doesn't affect in any way. Shota v'katan shenasu nashim u'meisun ishosem p'tuas b'nachalitza m'nayibam. A Shota or a katan and a minor, if they married, it's not a marriage at all. For instance, if they married and died, so then their wives, apart from chalitza or yibam, even though they had no children, because not a marriage at all. By a cheresh, it's going to be a kedushin d'Rabbanan, but by a Shota v'katan, there's no marriage at all. That's what our Mishnah said, that the bia is not considered a marriage at all, and it doesn't affect truma in any way. The Mishnah continued, and it said,
Think about being 9 years old one day.
no, that's considered a bia. That's true. It's considered a bia. But here we're talking about that there's no one that's puzzle over here. No, if they're puzzles, so then a bia's puzzles from 9 years old. That's not considered a bia. But if they're both kosher people, kosher lineage, and they have relations, so the shota doesn't have any marriage. So. This is the first case of the Mishnah. Yisrael, I think it's the first case. Yisrael Shabal Bas Kohen. Yeah, this is the first case over here. Bottom line, Yisrael Shabal Bas Kohen. So the bia doesn't stop her from eating truma, but if she becomes pregnant, so then she's not allowed to eat truma because she's not kinureh. She's not anymore in her youth anymore because she's pregnant. So the Gemara has a problem with this. She had relations, and the Rav says she could eat truma. What happened? Abbas Kohen, they had relations with Yisrael. The Rav asked you, he's a kosher boy, he's kosher. Maybe he'll say he got married. If it's a good shidduch, so get married. Why do you just? But so far, could eat truma. You could eat truma. But the kasha is that if she's pregnant, she's not allowed to eat truma.
Right.
Maybe she's pregnant. She doesn't know. They have to wait 3 months to be able to tell if she's pregnant. Maybe she's pregnant, so she shouldn't be able to eat truma. That's the kasha. You should be choshesh that she's pregnant. We had a Mishnah that if there was a mix-up in the marriage and the first relation was the opposite, the couples were switched by mistake, so then we have to be choshesh. Maybe she became pregnant to the first bia, and you have to wait 3 months in order to take chana, in order to be able to discern if she's pregnant. So here too, you should say for 3 months she shouldn't eat truma to make sure that she's not pregnant. If she's pregnant, she won't be able to eat truma. And from the beginning, she'll be able to eat truma. You don't know if pregnant, so you should say she shouldn't eat truma. Maybe she's pregnant. Over there, it's a question about who the child's not going to know who his father is. So over there, we wait 3 months to know who the kid is. But over here, and there's only chashash. It's a chashash. Maybe in the first bia that she became pregnant already. Not such a big chance. So we don't have to be choshesh. But the Gemara says it's not true. We are choshesh. Is that true that they're not choshesh for truma? I'll show you that there is. But a Kohen gave his wife a get. He didn't really want to divorce her. He just wanted to divorce her probably for purposes of yibum. She shouldn't have to, whatever the case would be. But he gave a get al manas that it should take effect an hour before he dies. Means he can't give a get after he dies. But probably the case was yibum. He didn't want his wife to fall to yibum, so he gave her a get. But he wants to be married to her, so he says it should take effect an hour before I die. So asur alach b'truma miyad. She can't.
Similar to the Muhammad's based out.
They say over there if I don't come back or something like that. Over there it's going to be if I don't come back.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, Okay, fine, so isn't it, I know.
It's
how
like,
it is that he did, sure,
that's
so-
good.
so I see.
Well, over there, we have to know if he comes back or not, even if we don't know that he's dead or not. If we know that there's no difference if he died or if there's a get. If he died, he died. If he dies, also she can get married again. It's only because they're not going to know. Lost in action. I think the case over there was that they might be missing in action, and then she's in aguna, so they gave a get. If I don't come back, so then it should be a get, or from a certain date. Even doesn't have to be lamafrei. It can be from a certain date. Okay, I don't know over there, but here the Gemara says over here, if a Kohen gave a get to his wife, that it should take effect now before he dies. So even though he might live another 25 years, but she can't eat truma at all, because why? We're always choshesh. Maybe he'll die within the hour. So you see a choshesh, even though small chance he's going to die within the hour, he's fine. He's doing exercise, everything's he's running around, but you don't know. So that's a small chance. If you're choshesh over there, you should be choshesh over here also. Maybe she's pregnant. There's more chance that she's pregnant that he's going to die within the hour. That is, if they're married, they had a relation for the purpose of marriage, then the chashash she became pregnant. But if they had a znus relationship and it's out of marriage, so when not she became pregnant, Rashi says, the Gemara says that there's a way that the woman could turn over in a way that the zera she shouldn't conceive, some kind of a contra-conception thing. So that's why we're not choshesh that she became pregnant, because this was without marriage. This was stand there. The boy and the girl had relations without any marriage. So over there, we're not choshesh she became pregnant from one BLO. But the Gemara says it's still not a kasha. But he's saying that if it would have been a marriage, we are choshesh. This does not do with us anymore. This is going to be a kasha over there. Over there it says by nesuin v'choshesh, even for a small chance. And the kasha is, I'll show you a place where we're not choshesh. Vatanya bas Kohen shenisais li Yisrael umeis tovelas v'ochelas b'tshumol erev. A bas Kohen that was married to Yisrael. It seems it doesn't say how long. Rashi says we're going to say even if it's for one day, and he died, she's allowed to go to the mikvah, because if they had relations, so then she has to go to the mikvah in order to eat truma. Well, chelas b'truma lev, she could eat truma. Here was a marriage. It wasn't znus. It was a marriage. She says she could eat truma. She's a bas Kohen that married Yisrael, but now he died, so she's not married to him anymore, and she can go back home to eat by her father's house truma. But why is that so? Maybe she's pregnant. The same kash we have in our Mishnah. But in our Mishnah we said it's znus only, but it's not znus, and it says the same thing that you're not choshesh she's pregnant. Why not? If she's pregnant, she wouldn't be allowed to eat truma. It says nesuin. And it wasn't znus. So that's the kasha. That and the answer is that doesn't suffice, because over there was an amish znus, but here's not znus. The Gemara is saying an answer that even if she is pregnant, the first 40 days the pregnancy is nothing. That means it's considered just water. It means that the fetus is not developed enough. Less than 40 days. It's serious of vlad. It's called 40 days. It takes 40 days from conception that the vlad already grew. The fetus grew 40-day old. Which the doctor told me it's about 11 millimeters. That's what the 40-day-old fetus is. It's like the top of a Parker pen, the click. That's 11 centimeters. That's 11 millimeters, like a centimeter plus. So that's the size of an uber at the age of 40 days. Before that, it's not considered anything. So here the Gemara says it's true that it's possible she is pregnant, but the first 40 days of the pregnancy doesn't make her not kinureha beisavia. She asked, why can't she eat truma? Because it has to be, she's the same status. That's called the same status, even though microscopically she is pregnant, but that's not enough. That's not considered that a pregnancy. She'd be allowed to eat truma.
Till 40 days.
Till 40 days. If she's not, yeah.
Even though it's hooker of vlad.
Even though?
Hooker of vlad.
No, it's not hooker. Not hooker. Hooker is 3 months. This is even, it's not hooker. But even though she's really pregnant, that's a chiddush. She's not the same as her virginity. She's not kinureha. She's pregnant, but the first 40 days is not considered a pregnancy. She'd be allowed to eat truma. Yes, please.
I don't understand why the man who gave the get an hour before he dies, why can't she eat truma?
He didn't give her. He gave her a get that it should take effect an hour before he dies.
Take effect, yeah. So why can't she eat truma?
Because he might die within the hour.
Oh, any hour might be that hour.
The hour, right? And even though he says I'm fine, he's doing he's jumping rope. He says I'm fine, but
might be eating truma within the hour before he dies. I see.
Right. So that was more conscious proof that even for a small chash choshesh, and the more tried to get out of it by saying it's nusla chosheshu, but now we have even a suin, and the more answer the first 40 days is allowed to eat, even if she is pregnant. That can answer our Mishnah also. Either you say in our Mishnah is nusla chosheshu, and it's mutter till she knows she's pregnant, even if it takes a long time to find out. But even if there is a chash that she's pregnant, the first 40 days there's no problem. If she's not pregnant, then it's no problem. And even if she is, the first 40 days also she'll be allowed to eat truma.
After 40 days,
Then she won't be able to eat truma. Then because maybe she's pregnant. She doesn't know. After 40 days, she doesn't know. But she'll have to stop eating truma because maybe she's pregnant. Until she'll find out in 3 months, then she'll know if she's pregnant or not. It says in the Brisa that if later on she does realize that she's pregnant, in 3 months she realized that she's pregnant, then all the truma that she ate is Rashi says that she'll have to pay a chomesh, whatever the punishment is for eating truma b'shogeg. She ate truma b'shogeg. She thought she's a bas kohen, but she wasn't allowed to eat truma because she really had a uber already. But she didn't know that. But it's a mistake. But all that truma, we see Lamafreya retroactively that she wasn't allowed to eat it. According to you, she wasn't allowed to eat it. The Gemara says, you're right. It only means she's mukulkelas retroactively until the 40 days. The first 40 days she's not. The first 40 days was okay. So if she finds out by 3 months that she's pregnant, so the past, whatever we'll say, 2 months minus 10 days means the 3 months minus the 40 days. The first 40 days is not a problem. But after that, that's when the problem started. So she didn't know she's pregnant, so if she kept on eating, she shouldn't have. The first 40 days she's allowed to eat. After that, she shouldn't. If she did, and then she finds out that she was really pregnant, she wasn't allowed to eat all that truma. She was a zar that had eating truma. She'll have to pay for that ownership, whatever it is, whatever the problem is for eating truma b'shogeg. And that's over. The sugya is over. The sugya came in because we have a little bit more to go. The sugya was that how come she could eat truma? Maybe she's pregnant. The answer was nusla chashashu, and even if she is, there's no problem about as long as the first 40 days. No sugya. It's going to come in because it's going to be relative to our Mishnah. So there's Erisin, then the Suin. We said Erisin is Ariat Mukadeshasli, and those days they used to separate, they still didn't live together for another year. She went back to her father's house, and then when they're ready to get married, they have the Suin, she comes to his house, and that's the actual consummating the marriage. He had relations with her. So it's not so terrible. They really married. It's a husband and wife, but they weren't supposed to get married until they had Sheva Brachas, Kala V'lo Bracha, Surah Kanida. So they shouldn't have had relations, but they did. What's the problem? It doesn't sound like a terribly serious problem. Rav Amma Avlad Mamzer, Shmuel Amma Avlad Shtuki. The Vlad is a Mamzer. What kind of Mamzer? Shmuel says a suffix Mamzer. Shtuki means a suffix Mamzer. Rav says a Vadai Mamzer. What's that all about? So the Gemara is going to say because if she's a prutza to her own orus, she also might have had relations with other men. Also, you see, she's a prutza. So the problem is maybe she had relations with other men. If she had relations, and he's masking. He agrees and she agrees. Both of them say they had relations. But we look. Bezdin says maybe she had relations out of the marriage also. And who knows? Who knows who the son is the son of? Maybe he's the son of a different man. And she's a Eshesish because she was already Mekudeshes. So the son is a mamzer. Shmuel says it's a suffix. Rav says it's a vadai. So it sounds like a very big chiddush, the whole thing. Amar Rav Amistava Milsa Derav the daima me'alma avalo daima me'alma basra didei shadin olei. I'm not sure what the word the daima means. I get the impression it means like rumors. That the only case is what the word the daima means.
Yeah, not similar.
I don't think so. It's something to do with rumors or suspicion, something like that. I didn't look up what the word literally means. That's the impression that I get. If anybody has a translation, please help. So the Stavra Milsa the Rav is talking about that there's rumors about her that she was hanging out with other men. Mm-hmm. Then B'choshes that she had relations with those men. She had relations with her own Oros she shouldn't have. So maybe they also had relations with other men. Also the kids of Mamza, maybe Bali Mamza. But if not, we'll assume that the relationship was from him. He himself was masculine that had relations, and the kid won't be considered a Mamza. How do I know that we're not choshish for her having relations out of the marriage unless there's a rumor about it? Diktani in our Mishnah, that's why the sugi comes in our Mishnah. Yolda tochal. It says in the Mishnah over here that what happened over here? Bas Yisrael the Kohen, they had relations out of marriage, no marriage, and Bas Yisrael the Kohen, and it says that if she gives birth, she could eat truma because she has a son of Kohen. Who says the son's a Kohen? Who says this from this man? She had relations. Maybe she had relations with other people also. If there's rumors going around that she had relations with other people also, so why should if she gives birth? Because who says this from this man? It must be that everyone, the suspicion is, the rumor is that she has relations with her Orus. They were too close, too intimate with each other. But she doesn't have any rumors about her that she had relations with anybody else. So why do you see that in our Mishnah? You're not choshish for other people. In the Mishnah, she's not supposed to have relations with anybody. She's not married to anybody. And we say that it's probably from the one that we heard about and not from the other ones we didn't hear about. So over here, Kolshkein, if she's married to this guy and he is also masking had relations, we're not going to be choshesh for an outside relations, and the kid's not going to be a mamzer. That's Rava's proof from our Mishnah that you're not choshesh that she had relations to somebody else if there's reason to think that it's only from him. Amalei Abaya, no raya. Lo l'meimelecha kalecha the daima minei afagav the lo daima meyalma amrav avlad mamzer. I could reject your proof. It could be that the case that Rav said as a mamzer is even if there's no rumors about anybody else. Thus, that we know that she had relations with her orus and they shouldn't have. Without sachoshes that she's a prusa and she had relations with other people also, and it's about a mamzer. Well, what's the case of the Mishnah? My timer, the meaning medafkwa nafshala gabi orus, afkwa nafshala alma. That since we see that she's prutza to her orus, maybe she's prutza to everybody. I could tell you the case of a Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't go. That's not the point of the Mishnah. The Mishnah just wants to say that if she had a son from this Kohen, it makes her to eat truma. The Mishnah going into the details. How do we know it's from him? Maybe not. They both were in jail. There's no question. We know that there's nobody else that had relations. It's only a question of them two, and they had relations, and the kid is surely a Kohen. It means it isn't the Mishnah's issue to talk about maybe it's from somebody else. We know for sure that it's only had relations. There's only possible relations. So it wouldn't be a proof. If you need a proof, it's not a proof. This was the first lashon that Rav said that if the Orus and the Arusa, both of them agree that they had relations, we're still choshesh or maybe even vadai that the kid is a mamzer from somebody else. And now the Gemara has ikadami that says change the whole thing. Ikadami, no, that's certainly not a question, which is taka very bechilish the first lashon. Nobody's in the first case. Everybody agrees. You assume that it's the husband. They said they both masking. Him and her both said we had relations before the nesuin. So surely you say that it's his child. That's not an issue. This is the issue. Arusa Shibra, the husband, the Orus, he denies. He says we didn't have relations, and we see she becomes pregnant. Where did she become pregnant from? She had relations out of the marriage. She's a Ishasish, and now the kid's going to be a mamzer. On that, Rav says Avlad mamzer, Shmuel Lama Avlad Shtuki. That's the case where it's a suffix mamzer or a bari mamzer because he denies it. He denies that they had relations, and that's why we're very choshish that she had relations out of marriage to somebody else, and then the kid will be a mamzer. Amarava, and this Rav is.
More than her, or
it's at least a suffix mamzer. And maybe a why is the Vlad Mamzer for sure? Any Rashi on that? That you go bus a road, and that would be the reason to say that if he denies it, so the rove chances are is that she had relations with somebody else. He's only one, but they had relations with everybody else. More chance that she had relations with somebody else, and he's denying that he had relations. But the case that Rav says is a mamzer is when there's no one had any suspicion that they had relations. He denies it, and no talk about it. And there is talk that then she had relations with she hangs out with other men. So then Rav says mamzer. Shmuel says suffix mamzer. Avol, next page. If there is rumors that they did have relations, even though he denies it, even though there's also rumors of other men also, there's rumors about him, and then Rav won't say that it's a mamzer, surely not a balai mamzer, maybe not a suffix mamzer, because there's rumors about him also. And if it's from him, it's not a mamzer, it's only, he's denying it. But if it will be from him, then it wouldn't be a mamzer, it'll be his child. How do I know this? Also from our Mishnah, the Tana Yolda Tocha. It says in our Mishnah, the same case, that they had relations with a Kohen. So we say that the child born is going to be a Kohen. What's the case that it says that the son is a Kohen? If the only talk is that they had relations and nobody else, there's no suspicion they had relations with anybody else. Is that a chiddush? We would have said we're not looking for chiddush. We're just saying all the different scenarios. But the Gemara says it wouldn't be a chiddush. We wouldn't have mentioned it. That's surely, why not? The kid's born, he's a Kohen, even though there's no marriage. She has a son who's a Kohen, so she could eat truma. It must be there's a chiddush over here. It must be that there's also suspicion that she had relations out and besides this person. She hangs out with him, she hangs out with other men also. And then the chiddush is you go with him. If that's true, if the case over there, where she's not married to anybody, and all of them she shouldn't have relations with, and we say that it's from him, so Kalvachomer over here that she's always to him, she probably have relations with him more than anybody else, and we're not going to be choshesh. So only the case would be that there's no talk about him having had relations, only for other people, then we don't choshesh that as a mamzer. That's not a proof. If you need a proof, it's not a proof. It could be that Rav holds that even if there's no talk, even if there is talk about him, if there's talk about everybody else, also don't say that it's from him. I the Mishnah or Masnisim, but the low diamond cloud. The case of the Mishnah was that it was quiet. If it was quiet, that there was no diamond mayalma at all, that's when we're not choshesh for other people because there was no such suspicion. But if there is a suspicion that there were other people also that had relations with her, even though there's also suspicion about him, maybe there is a chash, maybe over there will say a mamzer. So it wouldn't be a right from our Mishnah. Yasher koach hachem. Thank you, everybody. Shavua tov.